Bishop on Air, live with you this morning as we prepare soon to go exclusively with America's Talking Network for Illinois in Focus Daily. Be sure to like and subscribe with America's Talking Network. Click that notification bell. And you can also find the playlist for Illinois in Focus at America's Talking Network, and you can bookmark that. But obviously, we go live each and every weekday morning with stuff you need to know to get started with your day. So like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Make it happen with Illinois in Focus Daily at America's Talking Network. A couple of segments coming up, and we'll talk about the election with Illinois House Democrat saying that Biden needs to step down from the presidential race. While this week could be pretty telling as more conversations are had there, but we also got to look at what else is going to be on the ballot with several advisory referendum for the entire state. So we'll look at that, and also headlines out of Chicago with another violent weekend, but NASCAR had their race in the streets of Chicago. So we'll touch on all of that and more here with Bishop on Air, transitioning to Illinois in Focus Daily. Make it happen, folks. Subscribe at America's Talking Network. More voices coming out saying that President Joe Biden should step down from the race, and adding to that chorus is an Illinois congressman. What about the prospects of a new ticket? Could there be a slot for Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker? Interesting headlines on that issue over the weekend. But back at it with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out. America's Talking Network. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and also check out thecentersquare.com, where you can get more details of news impacting you across the state. So after the debate between former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden, there's been a lot of questions of should Joe Biden step down because of questions surrounding his cognitive ability. And since then, you've seen several voices come out, including members of Congress. There was going to be some kind of meeting with Democratic senators. Apparently, that's been called off, as it's being reported. But members of the U.S. House adding to their voices saying that President Joe Biden should step down, including Mike Quigley, a congressman from the Chicagoland area. He was on with MSNBC and Chris Hayes talking about this. Here's some of what he had to say on Friday when discussing whether or not Joe Biden should step down.
But you didn't answer the question. Do you agree with Raul Grijalva, Lloyd Doggett, and Seth Moulton? The president should step aside.
I had a hard time processing getting to that point with him, as I think anybody would who respects him so much. I would say, Mr. President, your legacy is set. We owe you the greatest debt of gratitude. The only thing that you can do now to cement that for all time and prevent utter catastrophe is to step down and let someone else do this. Because I think day one, we're back in a dogfight. All of a sudden, all the things we're talking about with President Biden, we've got a lot more we can talk about with Trump. Not just that he lied 28 times during the debate and that he's an absolute monster, but he has cognitive issues, something that Speaker Emeritus Pelosi brought up earlier this week. She's absolutely right.
So the R1
again, that's Mike Quigley, congressman from the Chicagoland area, addressing the concerns of President Joe Biden and will he step down, saying that he probably should be stepping down. But what's also interesting in the U.S. House, the House Oversight Committee, which is run by the Republicans in the slim majority, they posted this over the weekend. U.S. Representative James Comer reveals President Biden's physician was involved in the Biden's business dealings that resulted in $200,000 landing in Joe Biden's bank account. Did his involvement impact his medical assessment of the president? We are calling on him to testify and to provide documents. So another interesting twist there, possible conflicts of interest being questioned by members of the U.S. House. But you also have other headlines in this regard as to what could be happening with the possible shakeup of the Democratic ticket, especially heading into the Democratic National Convention, which is in August. And all indication is that we at thecentersquare.com are going to be credentialed to be in Chicago at the convention on the ground inside the convention hall during the DNC. But if you look at some of these headlines, as Biden's position continues to weaken, will Pritzker end up on a revamped Democratic ticket? Now, last week, we, of course, talked about all of the times that Pritzker was asked about a possible bid for the White House, and he time and again denied that was ever his intention.
I can't tell you anything other than I love the job that I have. It's why I'm running for re-election as governor of our state, and I intend to continue to do a good job for the people of the state for the next 4 years.
And that was way
Thank you
back
very
in
much.
June of 2022, which was an election year for his re-election campaign. So he took questions on that multiple times. The governor does not have a public event today, hasn't had public events for several days. So I imagine that once he does have a public event, questions are going to come at full force for Governor J.B. Pritzker. So that's kind of the lay of the land as of right now. Will we see more people come out and question the fitness of President Joe Biden? What about the Democrat delegates heading to the convention in August? Where are they standing on all of this? I'll do what I can to get some outreach on some of those names so we can have some conversations about heading into the convention in August and what that's going to look like, especially with these ongoing questions of the Biden mental fitness. All right, it is Illinois in Focus Daily. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network. Illinois in Focus Daily with the Center Square. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you for being part of the program each and every weekday morning. Just who you want to see as president on the November ballots, or maybe various contested state house races on the November ballots. Illinois voters could very well be asked 3 non-binding questions about a variety of things, but they're non-binding. Welcome in. It's Illinois in Focus Daily with America's Talking Network and the Center Square. Be sure to go to America's Talking Network and like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell for daily updates with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and you can follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air. So the ballot actually won't be certified until late August. Of course, you've got the Republican National Convention next week, and we are credentialed to be on the ground with the Center Square at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell as we do morning updates before the conventions get underway. And you'll definitely want to plug in and stay up to date with us at America's Talking Network each and every weekday morning for Illinois in Focus Daily. But you've also got the DNC in Chicago, and all indication is we're going to be credentialed there as well, talking with some of the key players, especially from Illinois and elsewhere. So that, again, all of the happenings with the presidential ticket, right? But then you've got objections that are being raised of those who are looking to be independent candidates on the presidential ballot. Also, a variety of contested races throughout the state for state house seats. You've got people who were slated as part of the process that's been laid out for this election cycle. If they didn't run in a primary, they could be slated for the November election. And you remember the lawsuits that happened around that measure. But that measure, which passed within 3 days, I think the House gutted a Senate bill about DCFS, the Department of Children and Family Services. They gutted that and replaced it with an election bill. And then they got it past the House and past the Senate within 2 days, and the governor signed it on day 3. But as that measure was going through, again, primarily the big controversy there was it dealt with the slating issue, but it also included 3 non-binding referenda. And while the slating issue was blocked by a district court judge in Sangamon County, the rest of the provision still is in place, from my understanding. So the judge only struck down a portion about slating, but when it comes to these non-binding referenda, that continues forward. And the legislature from time to time does this. They will, ultimately bring about non-binding resolutions and put them on the ballot instead of having, say, citizen-led initiatives. If you recall, there was an initiative almost 10 years ago, it feels like, where they had the issue of allowing for independent redistricting committees to individually and independently evaluate the state's planned jurisdiction maps. So that measure was a citizen-driven effort, got hundreds of thousands of signatures, but ultimately was blocked after a lawsuit by former House Speaker Michael Madigan. It's a long, convoluted story, but there are ways for citizens to get questions on the ballot in Illinois. None of those advanced. However, the legislature did advance non-binding resolutions on the November ballot. State Representative Jay Hoffman, a Democrat from Swansea, carried the Senate bill amendment in the House before it passed and laid out what these 3 non-binding referenda are that voters could be asked.
The advisory referendums, as I indicated, would be 3. First would be an Election Worker Protection and Candidate Accountability Referendum Act. The second, the Property Tax Relief and Fairness Referendum Act. The third, an Assisted Reproductive Health Referendum Act.
So, again, 3 different measures, one dealing with elections, another dealing with reproductive health, and the third dealing with property taxes. Interesting. We've got high property taxes in the state of Illinois. What exactly that referendum would say, we'll get more clarity on that. But after this was passed in the House mid-May, you've got the Republicans in the House voting present and then walking off the floor in protests. And they held a news conference in the stairs on the first floor at the Capitol. And here is State Representative Ryan Spain, a Republican from Peoria, laying out his criticism of how this process came together, and really these questions of are these really beneficial questions for voters?
They have all the ability they want to put real questions on the ballot to amend our Constitution. And you can pick what those topics should be. We had no transparency what any of these advisory topics got to be. I think there are many additional topics worthy of consideration for hearing feedback from voters. And I would certainly do it in a binding way that is meaningful and genuine, whether that is term limits or redistricting reform or challenging the sanctuary state policies that are hurting people throughout the state of Illinois. These are legitimate questions that should be presented to voters in a way that they could understand. Instead, we have these advisory referenda.
And Spain saying they don't really service the public at all. People saying, well, obviously there's high property taxes. And that's something that, clearly has people, frustrated, especially in the Chicago suburbs. I've seen stories of people's property taxes skyrocketing recently. The idea of what the property tax resolution would be, I guess we'll see in a moment here. We'll actually read from the legislation. But when it got to the state Senate, Senate President Don Harmon laid out his analysis of the 3 non-binding referenda that they want to ask voters.
The first question relates to election interference. The second would adopt a 3% surcharge on income over $1 million to provide property tax relief. And the third would ensure that health insurance policies cover access to in vitro fertilization and other reproductive healthcare procedures, regardless of the number of treatments.
So, again, 3 measures, one dealing with election security and poll workers, another dealing with property taxes and some kind of, surcharge, he said? And again, non-binding referenda, but the third would deal with...
it's very ironic that
the third would deal with the issue of reproductive health care that women can access. But on the Senate floor, Springfield Republican State Senator Steve McClure, he showed his opposition to this because it wasn't just a non-binding referendum. It was also a measure in this that prevented the slating of candidates who didn't run in the November or didn't run in the March primary to get on the November ballot. And Republicans saw that as election interference.
It's very ironic that a motion that contains a referendum on election interference actually interferes with a pending election. That's what this bill does.
So the irony there that Steve McClure is highlighting, frustrating for Republicans. And again, that measure about the slating that Republicans said interfered with the election was actually blocked by a Sangamon County district judge. It's being reviewed by the Illinois Supreme Court. Unlikely that it's actually going to be fully resolved before the election. So the slating of candidates is going to proceed if they sustain any kind of defense against certain objections that have been raised about signature gathering, for instance. So obviously the ballot has not been completely finished. It'll be certified in late August. So we'll be watching that. But just to look at what the non-binding resolutions could be, if you go to the measure at ilga.gov, Senate Bill 2412, again, it was a measure that started off as a Department of Children and Family Services welfare goals measure, but it was gutted and replaced with this language and signed by the governor. So we're going to go and check out where we can find the language for the non-binding referenda. And scrolling down here, we'll get to it here in just moments with some decently long bill here. All right, so here we go. The article may be cited as the Election Worker Protection and Candidate Accountability Referendum Act. And what's the question that could be asked to you, the voter? Should any candidate appearing on the Illinois ballot for federal, state, or local office be subject to civil penalties if the candidate interferes or attempts to interfere with an election worker's official duties? Again, a non-binding question on the ballots, but it's about election security. So that may be something to get people to the polls. The next non-binding referendum would ask this question: should the Illinois Constitution be amended to create an additional 3% tax on income greater than $1 million for the purpose of dedicating funds raised to property tax relief? So, we had the question of should there be a graduated income tax in the state of Illinois? And that was shot down by voters. This would be a non-binding question about should the Constitution be amended to allow for a 3% surcharge on income over $1 million. So that's interesting to see that question raised. And again, the ballot will be certified late August, and we'll see if this question ultimately makes it, which, since the legislature approved it, likely is going to happen. And then you've got the third non-binding question here that the legislature approved: should all medically appropriate assisted reproductive treatment, including but not limited to in vitro fertilization, be covered by any health insurance plan in Illinois that provides coverage for pregnancy benefits without limitation on the number of treatments? So again, another non-binding question that's likely going to be in front of voters this November. But they're just advisory. They're non-binding. Could there have been other binding resolutions like Representative Spain laid out? Term limits, redistricting reform, a whole host of other things I imagine the public could have thought of as well. So clearly, the Democrat majority at the Illinois legislature laying out their questions that they want to have asked, and the Republicans not going along with it, but they're in the super minority. So their voice really doesn't have as much weight as the Democrats do. All right, it is Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network. At least 101 people shot, 18 fatally in gun violence across the Windy City since the 4th of July holiday weekend. That is just one of many headlines out of Chicago. As we look at the weekend's headlines, we also got to look at some of the other things happening in Chicago, including NASCAR finishing their race despite a rain delay and protesters. And obviously a lot of happenings in Illinois' largest city. It is Illinois in Focus Daily with America's Talking Network and the Center Square. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for being here. So ABC out of Chicago reporting on 101 people being shot, 18 fatally in gun violence across Chicago. Obviously, that's a large number and concerning for a lot of people. But at the same time, you had a lot of spectators in Chicago watching NASCAR. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson taking some time wearing a NASCAR driving suit. He apparently got inside a NASCAR with the pace car, and having talked with some of the officials for the event. Here's just some of that the city of Chicago shared on their social media channels.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for having this race in your city. Thanks to the city council, all the members who supported it. I have a chance to work with General Motors on our racing programs around the world. And I was yesterday near Buckingham Fountain in the fan zone while the Xfinity race was running, and I was standing there thinking, there's no place like this that we race around the world, only Chicago. And so I want to thank you and the city council, all the supporters of this for making this happen.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the work that you've done. There are opportunities that exist in the city of Chicago that did not exist prior to NASCAR being here. And so this is a big deal for us. Thank you for all of the work that you do for Chevy, and you are confirming that the city of Chicago is the greatest freaking city in the world.
So Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson in Chicago Sunday for the NASCAR race. We'll see if they hold an official news conference today at some point to discuss the violence that happened over the weekend. But clearly, people are pretty frustrated, including Chicago Alderman Raymond Lopez. He posted this on X over the weekend to highlight just how many shooting incidents there were. And he says, this is what criminal enablers don't want you to see. Over a 3-day period, nearly 500 shooting incidents across the districts with gunshot detection technology, 127 on the southwest side alone. So that's a really eye-opening map, if indeed those all indicate shooting incidents that were captured by shot-spotting type technology, technology that, again, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is wanting to end the contract and apparently will be ending that contract. So facing these headlines, NASCAR there, but the violence in Chicago, making some people uneasy, and how exactly they're going to balance the need for these types of economic activities like NASCAR being in the Windy City with the ongoing questions of public safety in the Windy City. As you've got kind of this split screen of sorts, right? I mean, the map of the various shots that were picked up by shot spotter technology versus a race in Chicago with a national race car industry. How do you balance this? Obviously, the city of Chicago will have a lot on their plates dealing with this and more. So we'll update you each and every weekday morning as we get that information in with America's Talking Network Daily. With Illinois in Focus Daily at America's Talking Network. So go and subscribe, hit that notification bell. America's Talking Network each and every weekday morning with Illinois in Focus Daily. Appreciate you being here. I'm Greg Bishop. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air. Shout out to those hanging out with Bishop on Air throughout the program. Warsaw, Ozzy, Save the Humans, Carla, Thomas, Dangerous Liberty, Warsaw, again, active in the chat. Carla as well is active. Tenebris, good morning. And I tell you, guys, soon, date certain. It could be next week when we go to the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. America's Talking Network will be the only place you can get this early morning program, Illinois in Focus Daily. So go subscribe, hit that notification bell. I believe I updated the description of the show link, especially in YouTube, with a direct link to America's Talking Network so that you can subscribe. And we'll be watching over there. All right, Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out. For those of you looking for updates on Illinois' gun ban, I did do a quick overview of the cases that are pending in the Southern District. Those cases still moving forward. There hasn't been a docket entry since after the announcement that the U.S. Supreme Court was not going to take the cases. So bottom line there is September 16th, bench trial, Southern District of Illinois Federal Court. We'll be watching that closely, and obviously we'll be there on the ground to monitor that and bring you the latest. So follow me on X, Bishop on Air. We'll do live tweeting when that happens. But soon we'll have to delve into all of the different arguments that are being made about that from the plaintiffs' groups, but also the state as defense. So subscribe, hit that notification bell. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you so much for hanging out. Bishop on Air. And don't forget America's Talking Network with Illinois in Focus Daily. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day. Got to get out of here and get to being a reporter, all right? We'll see you guys here tomorrow.